In this episode of Testimony, a musician's story presented by Soundseekers, Canadian crossover artist Paul Hernandez shares his Christian testimony. He discusses the cultural difficulties of splitting his time growing up in a Honduras household and a Canadian household. Paul also shares the struggle of being named one of Rapzilla's 2012 freshmen as a teenager and trying to turn it into a music career. And Paul opens up about his issues with anxiety. Additionally, Paul goes in between the lines and shares the song stories of Deeper Things, Manana, Little Bit, and Runaway in the 4-song breakdown. I am Gaelica Brown, and this is Soundseekers Presents Testimony, a Musician's Story.
I lived in Canada all my life. I was born in a city called Vancouver. If you don't know where that is, it's like, think of Toronto as like the far east coast, and then Vancouver is like the far west coast.
Okay.
So that's where I grew up and lived all my life.
Okay.
Yeah.
And going back to like your earliest music memory, whether it be a song that you heard or maybe your first time playing something, what is your first music memory?
I would say the greatest one that really changed my life was the song by Lecrae, Don't Waste Your Life. That was like a turning point for me when I heard that. Okay. I started to question things for sure.
So, I mean, why, what were you questioning and why was that song so impactful?
It was more so just the place that I was in at that time. Like, I was actually in that place of faith, like of questioning it, if God does exist or if he doesn't exist. And I was really actually battling with that belief for a long time, and it was just really hard to live it out in high school. So like when I heard that song and saw that there was a whole musical realm of like Christian hip hop, like it really made me think this is something else. So like there's got to be more to this for sure.
So
yeah.
You were a high schooler when you heard it.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you didn't know that there was this whole genre of Christian hip hop, CHH, how did you come across Lecrae's Don't Waste Your Life?
My sister actually was listening to a few artists, and one of them happened to be Lecrae, and I can't remember if she directly sent it to me or if it just kind of popped up on my Facebook feed at the time, and it was kind of circulating in my family, so
okay.
Sooner or later I probably would have come across it.
Awesome. Okay, so going back to growing up in Canada, did you grow up in a childhood or a two-parent household?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Who did you grow up with?
So I was kind of, lack of a better term, I was kind of tossed around. Like I lived with my mom growing up. That was like just like through my early days in school. And then before I went to high school, I started living with my grandparents, and they raised me for a couple of years. And then after living with them, I had the opportunity to live with my dad. And that's when I actually began like kind of going to high school and like finishing high school actually. And that was pretty much like the rest of my growing up was during all my childhood, all my high school years living with my dad. So then that's when I lived in Vancouver. So it was my mom, my grandparents, and my dad.
Okay, so with your mom and your grandparents, what city was that in?
The city was Called Pitt Meadows. It's a small town. Like you've never heard of it. I forget about it. You know. So and then Kamloops was another town. So that's just like, it's not even a town. It's a smaller city. Like compared to Vancouver, it's super small. So it was just a couple hours away. But yeah, all in the same region.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure you're still in Canada. You're still in the same area.
Always, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I mean, how did that affect you to be with your mom and was it just your grandma or your grandparents?
Oh, my grandparents, both of them, grandma and grandpa.
Your grandparents.
Yeah.
And then how old were you when you went to your dad?
I was just going into grade 8. So that's, starting high school.
So
I was like,
teenager,
I was 13 years old.
Through puberty. Like this is the important time in your life where you need your father.
Exactly. Yeah.
You had your
13 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how was that transition then?
It was, I would say it was a bit different. I mean, the way that they do things in a household was a little bit different. Like, not to, like, it's just culturally different. Like, my dad is from Honduras,
Hmm.
and my grandparents, like, they're mostly Canadian, mixed European. So it's just like,
Okay.
it's a very different approach. And I would say I got the best of both worlds for sure. You know, having my dad was definitely a piece that was um, needed, and I really enjoyed the time that I lived with him, and I learned a lot for sure. Um, I could have been a better kid for sure. Yeah.
Okay. That's awesome. And then was it a Christian household at all, whether it was your with your grandma and your mom or your dad?
Yeah. So like with my mom, there definitely was like a background there, but I would always say when people ask me that question, it was more so just like from a familiarity. It was nothing serious. With my grandparents, my grandma is a Christian and believer, so she would actually take me to church with her uh, on the Sundays, and that was kind of my. But at the same time, I wasn't interested at all. Like, I was just going because she told me to go. And then with my dad, like, he's not Christian, he's not a believer, yeah, he just, that's when I started getting into more of a knowledge of Christianity. I had to be the one to kind of communicate that with him for sure.
Okay. So you grow up knowing about Christ. Um, Nothing like super hardcore. You weren't going to church every week, right?
Hmm.
No.
Right.
Okay.
That's right.
And so then you go to your dad's, who you have, I'm sure, who wasn't talking about Christ at all.
No.
And sometime during staying with your dad, you hear "Look crazy, don't waste your life."
Hmm.
And what is that transition like? What made you give your life to Christ, and how was that living in the house with your father who wasn't into that?
You know what? Yeah, it was a weird place for sure, because I was very new to everything that was happening, and I honestly didn't really know how to cope with it myself. Like, I think a lot of my faith started off musically, if that makes sense. Like, it was definitely more of a musical experience, and obviously being convicted by the lyrics, and but I associated a lot of that with my belief, with like, oh, like because I was just into music, right? And so listening to them and being able to combine that with what I was becoming more knowledgeable about was an interesting phase. But when I started being more involved within church, and I was going to summer camps, which were Christian based, there was definitely more like being fed to me every single year, every single time that I went. And I would definitely say that there was more of an awakening for me. And living with my dad, it was like, he knew what I was doing, and I did my best to try to live in the way that I thought was best to show
Hmm.
that to him. Keep in mind, I'm 13 years old, 14 years old, 15 years old, right? I don't know much about life yet, and sure as enough, don't know much about what I really believe in, right? So it was definitely a phase of getting very passionate, very like, not that that's wrong, but it was definitely, I definitely took things to an extreme that I guess made him feel like I was a fanatic, or I was crazy, or I was just kind of delusional. And it was just this journey of just trying to wrestle with him, and get him to believe what I believe, and start showing him videos, and so it was just it was definitely two worlds in one household. um, and again, I wasn't fully blossomed to the point where I knew how to properly communicate that with him, so it was kind of living on the edge in some
Yeah,
weird way. Yeah, that makes sense.
it totally does. So, I mean, because when you newly discover Christ, like you're on fire and you want to tell everyone about it. So it sounds like you were doing that in your household, and your dad, you said, borderline thought maybe you were a fanatic.
Hmm. That's right.
And but how did you even get to the Christian camps? Like, how did you get?
Yeah, so these were happening, like, my mom was sending me, like, even when I was living with her, like, prior to my grandparents and everything like that, like, I was going every year for like 10 years. And so um that was an experience for me that gave me more of a Christian background. You know, it gave me the Christian belt and it gave me the experience. But again, like I didn't really understand what it all meant. I wasn't able to soak it in the way that I thought, um, I should. And it more so was just a very positive experience that really, that's why I enjoyed going. You know, I love singing the songs. I love being around very kind people. But I also knew that, like, I never once told myself that God doesn't exist. Like I never, there's times that I questioned it, but I knew, and I always knew that he did exist. And I always knew that as a kid growing up. So that's all I really had to go with, is like, God exists. I get to go to summer camp. This is a great place. And I'm just on fire because I was there for a week doing the same thing and everybody's so nice. And you know what I mean? But again, I didn't really understand. So, yeah, that was all interwoven with all the places that I was living and the experiences that I was having simultaneously.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now, I mean, but there's a big difference between just going to a camp and actually knowing God for yourself.
Of
When did
course.
that connect to you?
So I would say, like, if you fast forward a bit, like I was probably like this was like a couple years after I started, like was in high school. I was in a couple like very small relationships, and one of them was a little bit more long term. After kind of going through that phase, and kind of having to cut that off, that was something that I did in faith. I said, "Okay, God, I'm giving you this. I'm going to move on." That same week, I ran into a guy who was kind of evangelizing. I didn't know at all. He was just talking and just telling me about this place that had music and had DJs, and it's a great community. Come check it out. It's called Gospel Sundays. And that same week, I brought my friend from high school that I'm close with, and we just started going. And that same week that I had ended that relationship was the same week that this church kind of popped out of nowhere. And so I definitely knew that it was God's purpose to kind of open that door for me to walk into. And as I was there, there was a couple other artists that were musicians, that were rappers, and it was a very creative space. It wasn't a space; it was a church, but it was a very creative-driven community that really actually showed me music and really gave me the platform to start and discover, what I was going to do. I had no idea. So as that started to happen, like that, my experiences going back to camp started to change, because I knew that there was something, like my understanding was enriched. My perspective is a lot different. When I remember going back a couple of years later and like, just, I guess, obviously maturing as a person, but also maturing in faith. Like it definitely, my approach was very different, and I actually enjoyed it a lot more. So there was definitely a change for sure when and you can appreciate, the things that you didn't understand.
Sure. I mean, that church sounds amazing too.
Hmm.
So, okay. So were you in high school then when you found this church?
Yeah, I was 16. Yeah, 16 years old, 15 years old was when I started going. And then I've been involved in that community for about 10 years. Yeah.
And did you have any music ability whatsoever when you started going to the church?
No, I listened to music, and I think I had like I just couldn't stop. Like, I don't know what it was. I think I felt like I had some sort of disorder as a kid. I've always trying to make like drum beats, and I always had a melodical like desire, but I didn't have an outlet, I guess you could say. So when I went to church, that was all kind of showcased, and provided, and that's kind of where it began.
I mean, because knowing now, listening to your music, you sing, you rap, your worship leader, like for that to just cultivate as a teenager, like most people, they start doing that when they're like 7, 8. You just jumped in at like 16, 17.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, what was the first start? You started on the drums then? Like, well, how
I
does
don't play. I don't play any instrument, to be honest.
really?
I don't. I know very little music theory, and I don't play any instrument. I can beatbox. That helps me produce my drum beats. Is I'll beatbox it. and then I honestly, like, I know that it's a gift that God has given me to be able to create quickly. And a lot of that does come from, like, worship. Like, I was talking to somebody the other day, and, from worship and worship leading, it's definitely something spontaneous that happens. It can happen, doesn't always have to happen. But it definitely is, something beautiful that happens when, you're given a melody and you just start singing that, so I think a lot of, if anything, it is like the reason why I've been able to create the way that I do. And with the, perspective that I have, it definitely stems all from worship and what I was shown.
Okay. And I also want to touch on the fact that you said while you were a teenager, you were in a relationship, you decided to just kind of hand it off to God and let God do whatever with that relationship. Where does where does that even come from as a teenager to try to give a relationship to God? Like, adults struggle doing that.
Yeah, of course. You know what? I don't know. I think, like, I just knew, like, I don't know. Like, I don't know, but I just knew. I don't know like, if that makes sense, but I knew it was the right thing to do, because I guess I was convicted, or I was just fearful. Like, I don't know what it was at the time. Like, I was afraid of what would happen if I kept going that way. But I also had, like, this tugging inside that was just so evident that I knew I had to respond to. Like, and it was almost like I had a foretaste of what was to come with the choice that I was going to make. That was better than what I had now, and I did it. It was definitely painful. Like, it was definitely not just, like, easy, right? It never is easy, but it was it was a scary thing. And I feel like a lot of the times when I think of that time, I think I had a lot more faith than I did in certain recent times. So it's definitely a beautiful thing, for those small things, but they make a big difference for sure.
Okay. And now you're married, right?
Yes, I am.
So do you think that, sacrificing something like that at such a young age, do you think that kind of fed into, like, the fruit of your marriage?
I definitely believe, like, I do believe so. I believe that God honors that, and you know, he who finds a wife finds a good thing. Like, I believe that God, he blessed me with what I knew I needed, and, like, I couldn't be more grateful, for sure. Like, it is definitely like a great gift, great blessing. And yeah, I did definitely see that as well.
Awesome. And how long have you been married?
Over 5 years now.
Do you guys have any kids?
Not yet. We're actually going to be planning for next year. Yeah.
Okay. And
Yeah.
was that part of the plan? You wanted to just be married and together for a while before you decided to start having kids?
Yeah, I think that's just kind of the way that things kind of flowed. We were never in a rush to have kids or anything like that. And it's just kind of, yeah, it just, I don't know. It just, we were never in a rush to, and I think that we have, yeah, I don't want to say you need to get things ironed out before you have kids, because, I mean, you can never be fully prepared. But I think that we've been able to enjoy a lot, and we'll definitely be looking forward to having them.
Do you mind if I ask how old you are?
26.
Okay. So
Yeah.
it's not like you had time. You had time
Yeah, for sure. So, of
to
course.
iron things out. Okay, that's awesome. And how would you say God's presence looks like in your life personally, outside of the music, just personally?
Personally, it is definitely something I've been practicing, and my job, like, I have my day job. I work at the Canadian Post, like Canada Post, which is like your version of the US Post. So my job just entails walking all day, delivering mail. I've written a lot of songs doing that, but I've also been able to pray, like, just during, yeah. So just praying, and as I'm walking and praying or listening to whatever, like, I've definitely been able to cultivate, like, stronger prayer life, and definitely more aware of, like, how a day can go with not walking with God and walking with God, the difference that makes. And Yeah, definitely. I think once you just kind of slow down and seize, like really, I've been practicing, like I've been recognizing how important it is to have like a Sabbath, to just get rest, just to seize, especially after releasing the project. Like you just want to feed into it and, share it and everything like that. But again, like I've recognized and appreciated, like just seizing, just stopping, and being with God. And yeah, it's definitely been good. It's definitely been something that I need to, days where you're just so exhausted and you just don't want to. So it's definitely, there's always a battle for sure.
Awesome. And let's move more into the music. So we talked about how the church that you got involved in was very influential in you getting into music, but how did you get into Christian hip hop? Or
Yeah,
just the
so I
music
mean,
that you make? Because I don't even know how, if you would necessarily categorize it as Christian hip hop, because it's kind of a mix. You do a lot.
a lot of crossover, which is
Yeah.
good. I like that. And I like I would definitely say when I started, I don't know if you know, but in 2012, like I was a Rapzilla freshman.
Okay.
And yeah, so I started off on Rapzilla actually, and that's kind of where I got my foundation, I guess you could say. Like I got my perspective, I knew how I wanted to write, I knew how I wanted to sound. Um, I knew the audience I was making music for, and that was kind of just where everything was. And that's all I knew, to be honest. I knew that I didn't want to write bad music, so I had to write good music. I didn't want to swear because I never did anyways. And I just kind of made do with what I had at the time. And as that kind of progressed, obviously life teaches you lessons, you get experiences, um, you sharpen your skill, you know what I mean? Like you just kind of work on that. I feel like that naturally takes your craft in ways that will look very different than the way that you start. And that's okay. Um, and so definitely my language has changed through my music. My creative process has changed. My approach has definitely changed. The message has never changed, but the approach and just learning to have fun making music, I think, is a great gift too. It's a gift, and you can have fun. People can dance to your music. You know what I mean? I don't have to have a sermon in every song, but I can hide little nuggets in there. You know what I mean? And I love to. I've learned to love to do that. Is really changed that. So yeah, it's definitely something that I'm still learning, and I think the last project taught me a lot for sure.
So going back to 2012, Rapzilla freshman, because that's a big thing. That's a big plug to come out. How old were you? You've been really young.
I was actually, yeah. So during the time that I got involved with that church and the people that were there was two other rappers there, and they inspired me. I started just working on music and doing everything. So I was 16, 17.
Jeez. And did
Yeah.
you go by a different name?
Yeah, I did. I went by an artist name called Dezcry, Dezcry.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just looked up the list. I was curious to see who was on that list that year. So I see Des Cry. That's why I was asking
Yeah.
him. But so we have Forever, not sure who Forever is. Social Club. That was
That's
they
funny, hey?
definitely have blown up since then.
Yeah.
Lee Green, not familiar with Lee Green. So we have you, Des Cry, Frontline Movement, T Word, Script. It's been a while since I've heard from Script. Bumps Imp, and Kid, who is no longer Kid. Now he's what is Zaya? Different name, not even in the genre anymore.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. I
interesting to,
remember all those guys. Yeah.
yeah, interesting to see like who's still in the game or who's still doing something a little bit different, still making
Hmm.
music, but not
Yeah.
the same type
Yeah.
of music. Gosh, okay,
Yeah. It's definitely a big throwback for sure.
for sure. Okay, so then would you say you were probably doing more Christian hip hop then, and it kind of transitioned into doing crossover things after that?
Yeah. I mean, I guess everybody's understanding of Christian hip hop it's literal. Like it is what it is. And I get it. I understand that because I was, again, like probably one of the first songs I heard was a Christian hip hop song, which by Lecrae, right? it might have been different if it was something else. I don't know. But yeah, I've definitely I've learned to really want to, I guess you could say, color out of the lines. That's what I like to say, is just really genre bend. And I think I love to say that I don't just want to make songs for the church. I love to, and I'm going to continue to do that. I might come out with a worship remix of something later on, but I also want to do something else, but I don't want to just make songs for the church. I also want to make anthems for the world to sing, you know what I mean? For people to give them something to sing, you know what I mean? Everybody's doing that, right? And there is a lot of great artists that do that without realizing it. I think when you find a hook that is catchy and you start singing it, that you don't find yourself singing things like, I believe, worship collective, like
you R. Kelly, I Believe I Can Fly. That's what
yeah. I believe I can fly. Yeah. So like stuff like that, like, that might speak to you, like when you don't want to take the garbage out and you hear that song, you feel inspired, you take it. I'm just kidding. But like when you're at a time in your life.
Inspired by R. Kelly. Sorry.
Yeah. Just the song, right? Like whatever, however you want to see it. But yeah, like I believe that, like in my perspective, being an artist that is a Christian who like, this is one thing I would say, is just because you're a Christian doesn't mean you need to be creative. Just because you're a Christian doesn't mean just because somebody's not Christian doesn't mean they're not intelligent or they're not creative. You know what I mean? Like, God made all of us in his image, and that, you know what I mean? We just, there's no difference. We're all in his image. We just happen to believe in who he sent, and that's what makes us a Christian. But we all have gifts, regardless if we believe in him or not. And as you can see, they're being used in great capacities. And there's secular artists who have changed people's lives. I see comments a lot of the times on popular videos like, oh, this song saved me from depression, or this song, I was going to kill myself, but this song, I heard this song on the radio and, I didn't, so not to say that that's the end game, but that's just music working as it is, right? Because music is powerful. But as a Christian, like, there is obviously a greater responsibility behind the music. And I definitely believe that it's going to, if your audience is within, loves Christian hip hop, just the basics, whatever, like, great, like, speak to them, right? Like, continue to do that, do what you're great at. I just feel like I just can't help it, I guess you could say, is I overflow with a desire to create all different types of music, with passion, with intentionality, just with authenticity. And I think that in itself will speak to those who are listening. That you know what I mean? It's kind of like just making music, and whatever, if something speaks to somebody, great, like, awesome. Like, hopefully they might go on my page and read my bio and find out that I believe in Jesus, and that might spark something, you know what I mean? So who knows? It's not up to me. I'm just having fun and creating, using the gift, and just remembering the responsibility, I guess you could say.
Okay. That's awesome. Yes, remember the responsibility. Music is powerful. So let's talk about your album, Deeper Things. So it's fairly new, and what about the concept of it?
Yeah, so the concept was definitely, as you were mentioning to me, like, being at such a young age, and I was already making these life-changing decisions and being exposed, to this faith that really made me have a weird relationship at home. Like, a lot of these things can really make somebody who's young, like, question a lot, even at an early age. And I just found myself growing up in such a way that I felt like I was kind of like, I didn't have like a rough childhood or anything. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't really know what is. I don't really know what's not dysfunctional anymore. But everything is, right, in its own way. But I would definitely say, like, I've always kind of had this sanitized kind of mindset where I knew that I didn't want to, like, hang out with people that would really, like scruff me up or just make me do stuff I didn't want to do. Like I always had that conviction inside of me in high school. So I knew that that was something I would never do. I wouldn't just kind of roll with the crowd, per se. But even becoming Christian and kind of having to live that out within high school, and, you know, working a job where people were predominantly not believers, I had to kind of always be the one that was in a position where I was trying to figure things out because I was learning, but I was also around people that, you know, were doing things that were different, right? And it was still learning, because at the same time I was still growing up, so there was a lot of growing in different areas at the same time. So I would say the album really encompasses how one kind of thinks. Like, I would find myself thinking very deeply a lot of the times. Like, I would overthink a lot, you know what I mean? And it would either work for me or work against me. And when it works against me, obviously you can just procrastinate and think too much to the point where you just have so much anxiety, or you can really question things deeply. And I found myself thinking things that I don't think the average person would think, like about life, about afterlife, about spirituality, and all these questions that I think was a lot of information for me, early, very, very young. So, but it also is a call for everybody to have to ask the deeper questions, because it is a very reflective project. Like, I try to tell stories, and I always say, like, my approach is to like I'm having a coffee with somebody, you know what I mean? And it's very conversational. So it's not, it's very down to earth, I guess you could say, in some ways. That's the kind of the approach I wanted to give it when somebody's listening. Like, I'm having a conversation with them. It's very practical. It's relatable. But there are these deeper questions that we need to ask ourselves, you know, about what happens when our time is done. You know, what happens when you're at your boiling point, you know. And I think it was just something I wanted to create that would be something sobering for people to hear, something fresh. Yeah.
No, I like that explanation, and the fact that, yeah, people should be asking these sort of questions and having these conversations with themselves, and that's
Mm-hmm.
ultimately what develops growth. So,
Right.
all right, well, let's go and do the 4-song breakdown, where you will rap or recite a verse and break down and discuss what's going on between the lines, or share a song story for that particular song. And for you, I chose Deeper Things, Manana, pronounce it,
Yeah.
Little Bit, and Runaway.
Okay.
So if you can start with Deeper Things.
Deeper Things. Okay. Yeah. So you want me to choose like a part of the song, or?
Yeah, whatever verse that you would want to share. And like I said, you can either rap it, sing
Okay.
it,
Yep. Yeah.
or
Yeah.
recite it.
I'm
Yeah.
thinking. Yeah. I'm thinking of the first verse, because this is kind of where it started. It goes, um, anxiety running my family. It used to make me unhappy, but that don't define me. No, I'm still in need of that caffeine. Yeah. I used to be scared of my thoughts and get lost in my imagination. Thought I was a weirdo. Always had a deeper longing for the deeper things, but never superficial. I remember when I made an image in my mind of God, I thought it was my own religion. I mixed it up with my emotions, got lost in confusion, was broke with the broke condition. Yeah, I spent the last 3 years trying to deal with my fears, letting go of everything I thought I knew, but still believing God is for me. So that was pretty much just like, I believe that there was some sort of generational curse of anxiety over my family, because, you know, my sister deals with it, and my mom deals with it, and I deal with it. And so I felt like, what is going on here? But I still love coffee, so I'm still going to drink it, even though it's not good for me. Not that it's not good for me, but it encourages it. So yeah, I just started off that, and pretty much just entails how that really correlated with the way that I viewed God. I always thought that, at first I thought he was always upset with me, and so I'd get really anxious when I did something wrong. And that was just a very distorted view that I was going through. And I wrote that because, again, that correlated with how I thought too deep. I overthought things. I was very critical of myself. And yeah, so I think that was how I wanted to open the project, and just right off the bat, right?
Yeah, I think that was an awesome way to start the project right off the bat. I mean, it sucked me in, and as a person who deals with anxiety as well, it definitely grabbed my attention. Um,
Yeah.
and it makes me wonder, like, how do you deal with your anxiety on a day-to-day basis?
Honestly,
Besides drinking coffee.
I think the biggest thing is everybody's different, but for me, I have a problem like stopping sometimes. Like my job is great because it's like, again, I'm walking, I'm outside, I'm moving, I'm burning calories. But again, like I'm go, go, go. Like I don't stop. Like from morning, I'm working like, you know, and then I come home and I'll use the time that I have before I have to, not, this is not always the case, but a lot of the times the windows that I'll have before, I grab my wife from work or I need to, have another commitment. Like I'll try to work on music. Right. So I'll come home, open up, project session. I'll keep working. I won't stop. Right. So I think, and the anxiety comes from just it's a restlessness. So the way that I deal with it is I just literally need to stop. Like I said, like Sabbath has been everything, to really cease, to really stop and just say like, it's okay. Like it's not going anywhere. It could, but, nobody needs me right now. Nobody's looking for me. Like I'm not going to miss anything. You just need to tell yourself that. Cause again, I think that is the source of our anxieties is we're afraid somebody's going to take our place or we're afraid we're going to miss something. So we just need to say, oh, it's okay. It's cool. I'm going to stop. And of course, prayer and trying to stay away from coffee, a little bit smaller coffees. Yeah, honestly, gym too, exercise.
Yeah.
After this quarantine, like I definitely felt more lethargic, and I definitely feel like anxiety has been more prevalent, just in
Yeah.
some ways, just because I haven't been able to. My body's like, what's going on?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And next, if we can do Manana.
Yeah. Let me see here. I honestly, I've performed this song one time, so I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah, I think I know the words. It goes, "I'm putting in work like midnight, on my way, no hitchhike. My bare hands that's fist fight. About David's son, no big bike. I ain't worried about dislikes, cause I ain't worried about this life. I'm sorry if I seem so distant. I'm just trying to go the distance. I've been working on my business. I got what is it? I've been working on my business. I got found. Sorry. It goes, I can't even remember the lyric. I'm so sorry. But pretty much like some of it was a fun song. You know what I mean? It was something that I really wanted to have fun with. And pretty much the song is about doing today, not putting off today, not doing, what is it? It's Teddy Roosevelt says, don't do what you can do today. Don't put off tomorrow what you can do today. It's still 9 a.m. here. So pretty much I wanted to encompass a song that would get that done and not put off what I could do today and put it off for tomorrow. So I found myself in that cycle just many times and I think I learned a lot of it from my dad, where he would just say, we'll do it tomorrow. Or when are you going to give me my allowance? So I'm going to do it tomorrow. And so a lot of that mindset really poured into, even my recent days in marriage and working on music. I would always be putting off something until tomorrow. And I would just tell myself, like, I got to get it done today. Like, and, like God is going to provide for it, but I got to do it. I got to actually get it done. You know what I mean? So this is very, again, a call for people to really just not let procrastination get the best of them. And like, if you got to do something, like finish it, like try to get it done, because like the world needs to hear what you're working on. The world, there's so many people that are wanting to hear what you have musically. And again, with the 2012 Rapzilla freshman thing, like if I believe that if I would actually finish the things that I was working on, because I had a lot of music I just held on to, then I might be in a different place. I might be more, you know, known, I guess you could say, within, certain communities. But again, like it is what it is. And that's why I've been able to kind of really recognize, no mañana, let's finish it today. I'm going to get this project done. So yeah, again, it was just a very fun song. And, yeah, it was, I think it was like one of the two songs that people enjoyed on the project the most.
I mean, it's definitely up tempo. It's a good workout song, good hype song. just the cadence, and the cadence was different than Deeper Things for sure, and just
Yeah,
the rest of the album.
yeah, like Deeper Things actually was I recorded that. That was probably the first song that, like, one of the first songs that I had recorded before I even thought of doing a project. And the rest of the songs were recorded like probably a year after. Like, so I just ended up tying that into the whole project, because I kind of really wanted to, like, I felt like, again, like with the first verse and opening the song with the project, I felt like that was something that I really wanted to showcase and make that the forefront of the concept, if that makes sense.
Totally does. Let's move forward to Little Bit.
Okay. A little bit is yeah, so Little Bit, do you want me to rap it first or talk about what it is?
It's totally up to you, whatever feels comfortable and natural to you.
Okay, let's do, I'll just give you a quick background. So Little Bit was pretty much honestly, I didn't have a pre-written idea for the song. It just kind of came out as I was playing as I was playing with the instrumental. And as I was recording, it just kind of came out like, we only know just a little bit. We don't even see the whole picture yet. And I think that what it is encompassing like the small moments that we have. Like if we need to resolve something within a relationship, like that could make all the difference. Like you don't realize that that small choice that you make can really have a great impact, positive or negatively. And I find that if we knew what the bigger picture was, a lot of our decisions would change, right? A lot of the choices that we make would really change if we really knew the bigger picture. But we only know just a little bit. And I also like the first verse pretty much. I'll wrap it. Is you got secrets that you got secrets that you don't want to tell anyone. You got secrets that you don't want to tell anyone. Sorry, I'm trying to remember it. I have it. You got secrets that you don't want to tell anyone. Got the same thoughts on repeat and you're feeling done. You can't imagine the shame and the feeling of looking that bad. I know you're doing your best, but you're pretending you don't even have to. You're looking at your family. Time is losing gradually. You've been feeling distant. You're running out of ammo. I know the things that are dangerous you can't feel confronting, but sometimes we got to shift things that'll make sense, don't make shift. So it's like a lot of the times we have to shift things in our life that are not going to make sense. We can't make shift that. We can't just give it, we can't pretend to change things. We really have to shift things around, if you know what I mean. And so like one of those things was, again, like looking back at my relationship, I had to let it go. I didn't know why. I kind of had an idea. I didn't know the whole picture. I only knew a little bit, but I couldn't fake that. I really had to shift something that I didn't understand what would happen next. And I really felt like, obviously being here where I am now, it definitely, I can see the fruit of that. Right. And then, yeah, so the second verse is, you're looking at your wifey, you're looking at your husband, relationship is different. Relationship is different. Things are looking ugly. You don't want to give. You already want to give up, feeling like you're in the middle of another argument that ain't going nowhere, and you're tired of the rhythm. You just in the kitchen, finishing the dishes, house so quiet, and you're feeling so distant. You ain't talking, things ain't super, and you're feeling superficial. And so it's just like, there's times where you can just come home and you would just feel like nothing's going on in the relationship. Like you guys haven't talked in like 3 days, and who's going to make the move? You know what I mean? Like, and so it goes like, things been fake like tempeh. That wine glass is empty. He's back in the man cave. You both had a bad day. And so like, I really related that song a lot to myself. Instead of trying to fix a problem, I kind of fled to the studio. You know what I mean? I would flee, come to my man cave where I feel safe, where I feel secure, where nobody's going to bother me. And definitely can become an idol for anybody that has that kind of sanctuary that they'll go to when they reach their boiling point. And so like, I find that a lot of relationships, instead of the people coming together, they just go their ways and go about things. But again, if you knew what the bigger picture was, and you had that in mind, the choice that you make would be a lot different. I definitely believe you would work on really valuing the little things. So yeah. But it's also a song to really sober people up and say, yeah, you know what? I only know a little bit. And I'm so glad that I do, because I don't have to know everything. And you know what I mean? I know the one who knows everything, kind of thing.
Right on.
Yeah.
Awesome. And last song, Runaway.
Runaway. So this what I would say, it's almost like part of the verses are like, verse 1 is, maybe it's the trauma when I was a child, maybe I was born with it in my blood. Either way, I know that its day will come. So it's like the first verse is talking about anxiety again. It's like almost another rendition of deeper things, like the song itself. And so it's like, I would question, is like, did this come into my life, like the way that I feel, or the things that I think, like, are they a result of something that happened when I was younger? Like, was I exposed to something? Like, did something happen to me? And, you know, was it the dysfunction in my family that made me feel this way, or what instilled fear in me? And so it was really kind of an introspection question. Like, maybe it's trauma when I was a child. Maybe I was just born with it. Maybe God decided that he wanted to make me have anxiety. Maybe born that way. But either way, like, regardless of how it came, I know that one day it will fade. Like, it's gonna vanish. Like, it's not the end game. You know what I mean? Like, either way, I know that its day will come. And so this song is pretty much like, when I would reach my boiling points, like, the question is do you run toward the pressure? Like, do you lean into it, or do you run away? You know what I mean? Do you turn the other way? And so this is also like a call to action for myself. When I would hear the song, like, I will never run away. Like, run away, run away, run away. I will never run away. Like, no matter how hard things get, no matter how much anxiety I have, like, I will never ever run away. Like, I'll stay committed to you. And that's why you can see the song kind of change a little bit. It goes later on when I say, like, love, listen, when you've done what you can do, just know that I'll be there to take care of you. I promise that we're both gonna make it through. You know what I mean? So it's just like, no matter what, like, I know that my duty is to take care of you, no matter what happens or what I feel. Like, we're both gonna make it through. Like, God's taking care of us. I'm not gonna run away. And even like during the second verse, I say, like, it's more of a realization, and maybe I'm looking at the anxiety from a different perspective, and I'm saying, hey, maybe this is something that's been used to keep me alive, because fear is not always a bad thing. Like, it can drive, like, again, Lecrae says it, fear, I believe fear drives faith. You know, if you see it that way, like, it definitely does. Like, fear it's a catalyst a lot of the times to really push us to do something. And so, like, I saw it in the second verse as hey, maybe it's the thunder that's kept me alive. Maybe it's kept me on my toes. Maybe it's made me depend on God a lot more. You know what I mean? Maybe it's taught me that I need to slow down, you know? So all these little things is just kind of an approach of how I would see it in light of what it is. Or, you know, maybe I've been crazy and believed a lie. Either way, I know whatever I believe it is, whatever it's been, it will pass. Like, this will pass. And yeah, it's just an anthemic vibe. I wanted to make a song that was anthemic, and a song that the world could sing. Like, you don't need to go to church to hear the song. Like, you don't need to, it's very receivable, like, to many people. I think it's relatable to anybody in the world. And hopefully is just a call for them to never run away when they reach their boiling point.
For sure. That's awesome. That was a good explanation. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. So musically, how does God's presence look in your life?
Musically, so like a long time ago, I created this acronym. I should write it down. I should put a plaque in my studio. And I called it WHY. And so the W stands for worship, the H stands for heart, and the Y stands for yourself. And pretty much the way that I approach music, and sometimes I've strayed a lot from this. Not that I've strayed from it, but I haven't really kept it in mind the way that I should. And so I always want to start off like just with an attitude of worship. I always want to begin working on something with a vision in mind, obviously, that is not for my own gain. Like, of course, I want to make great music and I want people to hear it. But when you get stuck in that cycle, you just kind of miss the joy of making it. Like, and it becomes a very conveyor belt kind of approach to releasing music, right? So I definitely always want to start with worship, and that will definitely help me be mindful with like inviting God, Holy Spirit, like come into the song, regardless if it's overly saturated or it's not, or it's a crossover track, whatever it may be. Like you're everywhere, and you want to inspire everything. The H stands for heart, and that's to always remember to put my heart into everything that I do, like, and that's where I'll have the most joy, and that's where people will be the most touched, because you're yourself. You know, you're they see that you're passionate, and they see that you mean what you say, and it just comes out naturally. The why is just to be yourself. You know, during my times with learning, you know, becoming a Rapzilla freshman and then moving on, like there's definitely a journey of finding yourself, but like it's more so in the sense of kind of finding the right fit for yourself musically, like and how is your character, like how do you talk to people, and how can you translate that into the way that you express, you know, music. And so I find that like I'm just going to be myself, and I'm going to have a conversation with somebody about some real things, and it's going to come out that way. So I find that if I don't have to keep comparing myself to somebody else or trying to sound like that person, I can be the best version of how I need to sound if I don't try to sound, you know, or if I don't overdo it, you know what I mean? So those three letters really keep me in place when it comes to really remembering why I do it, and it helps me have the confidence to keep making great music for people.
That's awesome. Why?
Yeah.
Good acronym. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Paul, it's been a pleasure meeting you, and
Yeah.
I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me. Now that you've had this conversation with me, if you could pick someone, another artist for me to interview, who would you like to see me interview?
Off the top of my head, I think that you should reach out to an artist. His name is Scribe Music.
Scribe.
He's awesome. He actually can't remember where he moved. He actually moved to the same province that I live in. So
Okay.
we've met a few times. I believe he has a story to tell, and you would really enjoy it.
I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please subscribe to our show. And if you really enjoy the content, please leave a review. It really does help with the ranking. For all things testimony, visit testimonystories.com. Until next time, I'm Gilika Brown, the music lover constantly seeking positive music.